Give it up real big for Chris Klima, Brent Hill, and Michael Thomas, everybody.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO of Cleanview, and I also write the Distilled newsletter where I write about climate technologies, like the one we'll be talking about today. So, as we all know, solar and wind will be key technologies in getting to net zero. But it turns out the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And so that's where energy storage technology comes in. In the last decade, batteries have become really cheap. In 2010, average lithium-ion battery cost about $1,200 per kilowatt hour. Today, they cost closer to $100. That means that the technology has fallen in cost by 90%. And that's enabling all kinds of new opportunities to decarbonize, but also to build more resilient communities, to have more stable electricity, and to have more stable economies that rely on it. Today, I'm joined by Brent Hill, an investor at Origin Ventures, and Chris Klima, head of investor relations at Torus. Brent, I want to start with you since you invest in a number of these technologies. What do you think is behind the recent growth in energy storage that we've seen in recent years?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Actually, to answer that question, put together just a few slides on what I think is a big challenge for all the good efforts in this room from all these people around climate and sustainability efforts. But we have something that's counterbalancing that with artificial intelligence, and I just wanted to share some data around that as we get started. So we've been through 4 economic eras in the United States with our economy over the last 200 and some years. The first is the agrarian. That was us learning to feed a nation as we expanded west. That looks like where I grew up. That could still be my farm that I grew up on. The industrial economy, which was steel and manufacturing and bridges and railroads and communications. The information age gave us semiconductors and computers and a big increase in improvement in our way of life. And the fourth was the most recent one until the AI economy, the digital age, which was social and mobile and e-commerce. And a period where we had innovations like ordering an Egg McMuffin for $3 and getting it delivered for $5. Despite all of that advancement and development, electricity consumption and generation in the U.S. has been relatively flat for the past 20 years. And it's because we've had a lot of innovation. For example, as we built a lot of software and data centers were developed, there was so much advancement in the power consumption of chips that our electricity consumption remained relatively flat. But that is no longer the case. And our 5th economic era is the artificial intelligence era. It started in 2020. Most of us would recognize it as starting in 2022 when ChatGPT was launched. That data center on the screen in blue is a lot different than the data centers that host a lot of software that Amazon and many others run. The language of the artificial intelligence economy is the bullet points on the left, some of the companies on the right. And because they've generated so much revenue so quickly, it's the most breathtaking revenue scale we've ever seen in technology, we have this wave of data centers being developed across the U.S. You can't go a day without some development, some announcement around some land acquisition or connection to the grid or a new power source or data center being built somewhere. And as a result, that's what we expect the next decade to look like, which is an increase of 35 to 80 gigawatts of power. But I come bringing good news. And the good news is that there's a lot of innovation going on in this sector. And you'll meet a company that's leading the way with this today in Torus with Chris. There's about $100 billion invested in artificial intelligence each year. About $20 billion of that goes into the infrastructure. That is power and data centers and things like that. And in addition to Torus, which is centered around energy storage, there's innovation around the chips, the components, the cooling, the locations that will hopefully drive down that energy consumption over time so that we can keep electricity consumption more flat, get all the great upside of artificial intelligence without the downside of the impact on our grid.
And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about Torus? My understanding is that most batteries that have been deployed on the grid today are lithium-ion batteries. These are basically the same batteries that we have on our phones, on our laptops. We just stick, 1,000 of them, 100,000 of them in a storage container. How is Torus different, and what technology are you all building there?
Yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for having us today. My name's Chris. I am the Chief of Staff and Head of Investor Relations at Torus. We're actually based in Salt Lake City, Utah, so not far from here. We can all compete about who has the best snow some other day. But what we focus on is energy storage and energy management through a flywheel energy storage device paired with lithium iron phosphate batteries. As you can see on the screen, and I'll jump a few slides here, is we actually focus on subtransmission and distribution. So we actually don't put batteries on main transmission at Torus. We focus on locations like mountain towns or other commercial and industrial locations to provide cleansed power at those locations. In addition, we have a system that is a hybrid solution. So we have a flywheel energy storage device. Think of it as a one-wheeled electric vehicle. But it stores and produces power and ships that back to the grid or to a manufacturing facility or to a mountain town. We also pair that with a chemical battery that we actually produce here in the US. So we have a provider here that we've invested in based in Nevada that produces our chemical battery cells. When we think about flywheel energy storage, we think about how all, I guess you could say, generation plants for history have been created. They work on a generator, so on a motor generator that they produce energy on. That is what a flywheel is. So it's actually spinning a large piece of mass and storing energy in a kinetic form versus a chemical form. But the reason for that is for inertia. So if you think about chemical batteries traditionally and through solar, they have inverters, which artificially create inertia, which has frequency issues in our cities and in our towns. The flywheel is able to actually store that via an inertial-based storage device and provide cleansed power. What's unique about us is this is a good example of what this looks like in practice. We always like to show real product. But what's interesting about today is that we actually share investors with powder. Because our mission at Torus is actually to empower communities to be their own sustainable energy provider. And so with our flywheel energy storage device, we're able to do that, basically provide a lot of power quality as well as energy storage solutions.
And Brent, you gave a really great 30,000-foot view, but zooming into mountain towns and ski resorts, why should policymakers or folks on the sustainability teams at these organizations care about batteries more generally and all the benefits that they bring?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly cases where you have critical industries that need a buffer between performance of the grid and their operations, and ski resorts, hospitality properties are no different that way. And we have an increasing number of what we call demand response events on our grid, where something is happening and a grid operator would like companies, people to take action. And the Torus platform and how you can drop it in, and Chris will probably provide some examples of where these installations are going, creates a buffer between the grid and some kind of industrial component. And that could be a ski lift operation, it could be a hospitality property, a large resort. And so it's that buffer for these demand response events because they're happening with an increasing frequency.
So it can essentially keep a ski lift running, it can keep the lights on at the lodge where we're all eating, it sounds like.
One of the things we liked about Torus when we met the company is the combination of an innovative flywheel design and then a battery enclosure is it gives you both long and short duration, and you can be bursty when you need it. You can be long duration if you need power for an outage or something.
And I know one of the things that's probably on a lot of folks' minds today, as bills have been rising so much, is what we can do to really alleviate electricity bill cost increases. My understanding is that most of the increases in electricity prices recently have been because of the so-called poles and wires, the transmission infrastructure, distribution lines, and it sounds like batteries can help alleviate some of that pressure. Can you talk to some of those use cases and how they can kind of help?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways that storage can specifically help with that solution. One is it creates capacity on those poles and lines, so you need less of them. So one thing we do is we have a really strong partnership with PacifiCorp in Utah and then all their other states. And what we do is we install at a discounted price for those locations for cities and hospitality resorts, airports, et cetera, to be able to load curtail off of their lines and poles during an event. And so Rocky Mountain Power has asked us to deploy 500 megawatts over the next couple of years of energy storage to do that. But what that results for in the end customer is that we're able to actually peak shave every single day for them while creating energy backup, et cetera. And so a good example is there's a ski resort in Utah that they're on a bill that every time in 1 month they're charged their demand charge for the largest 15-minute interval in their month. And if you look at their interval curve every single month, there's usually one event that's 40 or 50% higher than any other event in the whole month. And so our job for PacifiCorp and for the end customer is to shave that off and to save them 40 or 50% off their bill every single month. And so storage is able to do a lot of things with energy savings and demand savings, but it also just helps with those hidden costs as well for the utility and for the end customer, where you keep the lights on all the time.
Great. And you've been deploying a lot of these batteries in mountain towns. Sounds like you have a partnership with a ski resort most folks will know about. Can you talk about some of your favorite use cases or stories from the field and deploying some of this stuff?
Yeah, so we're partnering with several different resorts and locations in the Wasatch Front in Utah right now. We're actually, I think we're pouring concrete to install at Woodward Park City next week, so that's pretty exciting. And so, yeah, but a few awesome use cases that we like is there is solar arrays at a lot of these locations where we're able to take more advantage of that solar, first of all, rather than pushing it back to the grid, storing it and then using it at other opportunities. Another really cool example is if you look at Snowbird Ski Resort, their tram actually runs off of a flywheel that pushes the tram up and down. And they have massive volatility shifts that causes instability in their grid, which then harms anything if anything happens. And so what's cool is we're working on solutions there to be able to smooth out that power with the flywheel tied to their flywheel. And the other cool thing is the flywheel that we create is 95% recyclable. And so if you think about all the impacts and the like the climate impacts of recyclability, with the flywheel, we actually can melt it down and make a new one, and it lasts for 40 years. And so there's just a lot of cool opportunities to work with different mountain towns and ski resorts.
Thinking of a community like Snowbird or a mountain like Snowbird, I think it's a similar example to probably a lot of mountain towns and ski resorts where it's up a canyon that gets a lot of snow, which we all love, but that can also cause trees to fall down on a power line. We're increasingly feeling this in the summer months too, when there's wildfires that kind of go through a whole canyon and wipe out a power line. How can batteries make communities more resilient and help kind of navigate some of these climate risks and shocks? Brent would love to.
You should get. I mean, I think the best way to exemplify this is probably just for Chris to talk about some of the safeguards that are built into a platform like Torus so that it can operate in a desert, up a canyon, where trees might fall, where trees might burn.
Yeah. Well, I think, Michael, you asked a question earlier about chemical batteries versus flywheels. We would say that all types of storage is a win for the environment and a win for the grid. The reason why we like flywheels is chemical batteries do really well going through environments, like your phone, you travel with it, your car, you travel with it, where like mechanical batteries do really well with environments going through you. And so we have a lot of safeguards in our flywheel. It's safer than anything I've ever seen, actually. But then also with fires and other things like that, on our chemical batteries, we actually have fire suppression built into everything we do. And so if we ever have any issues with thermal issues, we basically are able to deploy and track things 24/7 and mitigate it before anything happens. And I think that's how we have to think about the environment first in the product, to be able to actually think from a security perspective or a safety perspective to make sure everything's up and running all the time.
So you mentioned fires. I think this is going to be something that's on a lot of folks in the audience's mind, especially if they're elected officials who are trying to deploy these technologies. I was just talking to somebody earlier this morning who said that they're in a county that placed a moratorium on batteries. And I think what I've seen in the last year or so is in response to some fires like the one in Monterey in California earlier this year, there's been a lot of local pushback. And it's kind of a cross-partisan spectrum. It's not red, it's not blue. And I wonder what have you found works in terms of talking to communities about the risks of this, and what have you learned about deploying this technology safely so that we can protect communities?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, again, education around how the product works and the safety factors that are already built in. A good example about Torus is that on our chemical cells, we had to go through rigorous tests where you put the batteries to 300 degrees and they still haven't gone on fire. We feel like 5-10 years ago, where all the battery fires are actually coming from for those installations, they weren't built with the right protections in mind. And so we are actually very pro-regulation on all this, on the sense of making sure the safety factors are there. And as we increase those, it puts the onus on us as the builders to build it in a way where we can have that and, I guess, mitigate all those risks. And so really it's come down to education on what the product does and all the safety factors that we have built in. Because we would say that historically the products haven't been built with those. And so we've been built with safety minded first.
I think one of the things the people in this room can help with is amplifying the success stories. The failures make the news. There are a million success stories that are unfolding every single day. And this era of investment and innovation like Torus comes with more software. It looks like a hardware company. It has millions of lines of code to manage thermal dynamics and power electronics and everything else. It has a security appliance built into it. The next wave of devices connected to our grid will have all of those features. And so where policymakers can really help is, we all want a lot of this innovation, like the small modular nuclear reactors, for example. There's some advantages to those. But as soon as you start to talk to somebody about a location, NIMBY behavior starts to emerge, and we just have to get back to telling all the success stories versus the failures.
Great. Well, I think we're going to open it up to some questions from the audience. I know probably a lot of questions about the technology since it's a bit newer. So we've got a mic runner. If folks want to raise their hand, we've got a question over here that we'll start with, and then we'll go over there.
Hello. My question is, can you speak to some of the co-benefits of your distributed energy storage system, such as the potential to have some low voltage ride-through, or the potential for power quality improvements, or the potential for backup power?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. So the reason why the flywheel is so good at that is that it has all those built into it because it works off a motor generator. And so the low voltage ride through and the frequency is actually all created through that inertial mass, which saves, I guess, that frequency. And so our motor actually looks at the field before it gets to it, 1 millisecond before, and can respond in less than 250 milliseconds. I know it's a lot of nerd stats up here, but the reason why we do that is because we built this initially for manufacturing, like automated manufacturing. And so you have to have all those power quality factors built into the product to make sure it works. Our flywheel, we have to manufacture the steel to 1/10,000th of an inch. If we have any blip in power, we lose a very expensive part and have to throw it away. And so we have the same problems here, but the product works through those factors on every second of the day, and that's its job. And that's why we actually have a hybrid solution, is because the flywheel's doing all the power quality work, all the short duration like swings that we all see in our demands. And then we have the chemical batteries in the energy management system that has the emergency backup where it can click on and run fully off Torus for an emergency backup situation.
All right. And then we've got a question up there.
Hi there. Josh Staub from Crested Butte. I apologize for the setup to my question. It might take a second. Over the last couple of days, we've talked about obviously how renewable energy is, improving, and it's much more preferred over coal and fuel and all these things. But when we talk about batteries and lithium, I haven't heard us discuss a lot of things about sustainability with water and how much water it takes. And with you guys all being from Utah, being in a 25-year mega drought, just curious, are you guys obviously actively thinking about how you're affecting the water supply in Utah? What are you guys doing for sustainability regarding water? And then also with the sourcing of lithium and how it's affecting South America and the indigenous people down there, are you guys actively doing anything to improve those situations? Or I know you're thinking about them moving forward, but are you guys doing anything to improve either of those items?
Yeah, so on the lithium, we are currently trying to diversify through our acquisition of Ultion, our investment in Ultion, the Nevada-based company. Everything is based from Canada, is where we get all of our minerals for those. And we did a lot of research on making sure that those were done with safe practices. And on the larger aspect, our vision is actually that we increase our flywheel capacity, that we have very minimal lithium iron phosphate storage over the long run. So our goals and what we're working on is different platforms of our flywheel to be able to increase the energy density so it's pure steel and not created through other factors like lithium iron phosphate. And that's something that we continually discuss all the time. Because like you said, the first thing when we built the product, the governor of Utah went to our CEO and brought up these concerns because of the water situation. And so that's why we're continually trying to emphasize and innovate on our own platform to be able to continue to move that direction.
All right. Got a question
Hey.
over there.
So laws of thermodynamics, no battery is going to be perfectly efficient, but I'm curious how the efficiency compares between chemical batteries and your flywheel battery.
Yeah, so the flywheel, first of all, it lasts, I can't say it lasts forever because then no one believes me. We have a 25-year service life on our flywheel. The only things that you actually change are the bearings. How we think about efficiency is actually what we call coasting loss. So basically when you spin up a flywheel to full state of charge, how long does it take to get to zero state of charge? And so what we're constantly doing is looking at those different dynamics. We're currently at about 88 to 91% round trip efficient on the flywheel. The reason is the flywheel actually sits in a vacuum chamber when it's spinning, so there's no atmospheric pressure and it's magnetically levitated. So there's a 6,000 pound rotor that is feeling 100 pounds of face pressure on those bearings, and that's just creating that efficiency. Flywheels have been around forever. If you actually do a lot of research, they've been around forever, but the nuance here is that the power electronic ecosystem, as well as the need, hasn't been as strong as it's come up. We are a renewable first company and a partnership with utility first company. Like, we want to partner with utility and partner with renewables at the same time to create a better future. However, if you continue to put renewables on the grid, and have those go through inverters that artificially create inertia, you have a lot of issues with frequency. And so the flywheels actually help create that inertia on the grid continually at a good efficiency rate compared to just traditional chemical batteries too.
All right. We've got another question up here.
Hey, question about flywheels. I think you just answered it. But historically, there's a lot of maintenance involved in flywheels. If you're sitting in a vacuum, I'm assuming there isn't, and you talked about bearing changes. But I'm just wondering what the maintenance is long-term and what we're doing in all of these new technologies to create the workforce pipeline that's going to come and work on it and keep them running after we initially sell them off. So,
yeah, that's a great question. We are actually very focused. Our CEO was at One Utah Summit earlier this week because he wants to actually build a lot of our workforce from rural towns in Utah to be able to continue to educate different trades. Our service life is, like I said, 25 years. The maintenance on it is actually every couple of years we do a bearing check. We just look in, see how the bearings are doing. If they're doing good, we're fine and we keep on going. If they're not, then we replace them, and that's an in-field service that takes less than 20 minutes. The nuance of here of how we've thought about the end customer too is that at Torus, we actually prefer for us to own the asset when we deploy it, to move the spend from the end customers to be on the operational expense versus having to have a massive capital expenditure outlay. We know that everyone has money that they can spend other ways to increase revenue or put it in different initiatives, and so our goals is to actually, our team is the one that's servicing it 24/7. We're monitoring it with software and security at 24/7. We have a team that's fully responsive there, and so I think that's a unique thing that we're trying to do too.
I mean, you guys innovated around the battery sled and that idea as well to improve the maintenance profile of even the battery enclosure.
All right. Well, I think we're at time. So thank you all for the great audience questions. Thank you, Brent and Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more time for Chris, Brent, and Michael. Great job.